On today's Locked On Giants podcast, NFL Network draft analyst Charles Davis joins us to talk Giants draft, value picks, and much more. That's coming your way next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Welcome, New York Giant fans, to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm Patricia Traina, credentialed member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for Giants Country over on the Fan Nation Network. And welcome in to all my newcomers, my Blue Crew community members, my everydayers, and everybody in between. You're all appreciated and loved. And on today's podcast, I am pleased to welcome in Charles Davis. He is an NFL Network draft analyst, also a former NFL player. The NFL Network provides live coverage of the 2024 NFL Draft in Detroit, April 25th through the 27th. And Charles, I'm sure, will be a part of that coverage. And Charles, welcome on in to the Locked On Giants podcast.
Well, thank you, Patricia. Appreciate you having me on. And just so we don't all get in trouble here, because I can hear it now, I was a potential NFL player, got cut and didn't make it, but I had a chance. All right. I tried out with the Cowboys, so I can hear it now. Oh, Davis passed himself off as an NFL player. No. You guys.
Well, you had a chance.
I didn't make it, and now I get to yak about it. So it's pretty.
So cool. you were in a camp, though. I mean, that's more than what I can claim. You know,
I was
more than what a lot of people can.
There you go.
All right, Charles, let's get down to business here. Obviously for the New York Giants, the big debate is quarterback at 6. Do they move up? Do they move down? Do they stay put? Yeah. Who's the best fit? Let's start with the overall value at the top of the quarterback class. Who are the top guys you think in order, and who do you think may be there for the Giants if they were to stay at 6?
Yeah, I think there's, 2 pods of quarterbacks to start off with, and you might be able to even make it 3 pods. And I'll go with 3 just for our discussion here, meaning top of the food chain. What's your order? Caleb Williams seems like the consensus number 1 out of USC. Then your fight comes in between, do you like Jaden Daniels of LSU better or Drake May of North Carolina better? The reason I've turned it into 3 pods is I think J.J. McCarthy from Michigan feels like he's standing alone by himself as the next quarterback, so that would be 4. And then you go into the 3rd pod, which is, do you like Bo Nix or Michael Penix better? Bo Nix out of Oregon, Michael Penix out of Washington. That's what I feel like. Are all 6 potentially first-round quarterbacks? Well, based on how teams are going about things, and as you well know, based on that 5th-year option that teams like to have for a quarterback, that we've seen teams trade back into the first round or make a deal in the first round so they can get that quarterback there to get the 5th year, it's not out of line to think that all 6 could find homes. I think I'm feeling very good about 4 in the first round. That almost feels like a lock to me. And I feel like a 5th is going to fall in there somewhere. The 6th, that might take some doing, but it's not out of line.
Charles, just backing up a little bit, you look at the history of drafting quarterbacks in the first round, and it's not a sure thing. Why do you think that is?
I think the evaluation process is so difficult. Look, there was one time when I was working for NFL Network that we came on air, and our whole theme for the year was drafting, scouting, evaluating. Is it art or is it science? And I think there's a combination in there, and you're not sure what the alchemy is all the time, right? Sometimes what looks like a lock is not. A guy that we've overlooked is. In between, we're not sure. Okay. Recent history tells us that all of us who had eyes thought that Brock Purdy going 7th and the last pick of the first round to the 49ers, I dare anyone to come out now and say, oh, no, I flipped out. They should have taken Brock Purdy early. We didn't hear it. No one heard it. It just sailed through. In fact, we were all just thrilled he got picked because that meant the draft was over. We could all go home. But no one was pounding the table going, he should have gone way earlier. No. How did that work out? Okay. Trey Lance, remember all that big deal coming for him and the 49ers moving up, and everybody thought they were moving up for Mac Jones. Ended up being Trey Lance. That didn't work out for them, but Mac Jones ultimately didn't work out for New England, right? We can just go back to the 2021 class where we are right now. Trevor Lawrence stands alone, still with the same team and looking like he still has a chance to be a guy, all right? This is a huge year for him. Everyone else, Zach Wilson's still with the same team, but they don't want it. So how does it play out? So why is it so difficult? I just think because of where these kids come out, who they go to, where the team is at the time, what's around him, what's the process of, did they understand him as a person to mature him the right way or give him the tools? See all the things that go into it? If people go to the wrong team, they're dead in the water. If they go to the wrong hands, they're dead in the water. Sometimes you get into the right spot, the right situation, the right person, and it all comes together, and you end up with a success story. So I'll just leave it with this. A Super Bowl winning head coach told me one time, and he said, and I'm only partially kidding when I tell you this, it's a 50-50 proposition. I don't care how much time, effort, money we spend on these kids. It comes out to about 50-50. He said, yes, dartboard, probably too far. He said, but maybe not totally out of line. That's what a Super Bowl winning head coach told me about evaluating quarterbacks. That's how tough it is.
Yeah. And it's the draft in general is very tough because, you can think you have a surefire hit and then that person doesn't work out. And then you look at the Puka Nakuas of the world who,
Yes.
Nobody gave it a second thought to, and then they rise up the board. So it's definitely a crapshoot. Charles, I want to ask you about JJ McCarthy, because that's a guy who at the very beginning of this process, I don't think a lot of people were talking about in the first round, and he's been zooming up a lot of draft boards. You in your first edition of your mock draft, and I know you have another one coming out in about a week or so.
About a week, yeah.
You had JJ McCarthy going to the Giants at 6. Now, JJ McCarthy, compared to some, the Caleb Williams and the Drake Mays and the Jaden Daniels, hasn't thrown as much at Michigan just because of the offense that they run. Why has JJ McCarthy shot up the draft boards, do you think?
I think let's start with the point you just made. Okay. You don't have as many throws on tape because of the way Michigan ran the football, right? When you have back-to-back, what they call the Joe Moore Award for best offensive line in the country, offensive line, you don't have to spend all day long back in the pocket throwing it 50 times. When you can go to Penn State, okay, which is always known for defense, and run the ball the entire second half, throw one pass that doesn't show up on the stat sheet because there was a penalty, that tells you a lot, right? But with JJ McCarthy, I think we saw some of it at the combine. Better athleticism than probably given credit for. If you saw him do his 3-cone drill, I mean, his time is as good as you're going to get. So that tells you that his ability to move within the pocket, which is where you really want the best out of your quarterback, is right there. Plus, he can get out of it. The other part is you see the traits that you're looking for on tape, even though you don't see it as often. And I'm going to make a comparison that is not an apples to apples comparison. But at this time last year, we were talking about CJ Stroud and things we didn't see on tape as much as we saw with others. But we saw it. We saw these traits. We just didn't see them as often. And so, as a scout or an evaluator, you have to say to yourself, well, since I've seen it, I know he can do it, but can he do it consistently? What was CJ Stroud? Could he run the ball consistently? Well, did you watch this year in Houston? Yeah, he can. Can he do this consistently? Yes, he can. So all those things kicked in. That's why I'm saying my comparison for JJ McCarthy this year is not an apples to apples, but it's an apples to oranges, but it's CJ Stroud because the same questions we asked about Stroud last year, we're asking about McCarthy this year. I didn't see a lot of that. I didn't see this. But if you look, you want a deep ball, you'll find it. And find it really well on tape. You want that 20-yard dig, it's on tape. If you want that bang eight, skinny post where he throws a laser shot, it's on tape. You want to see him get outside the pocket and throw back inside and throw to someone and put it on him, it's on tape. You want to see him feather it over the linebacker and before the safety, it's on tape. As many times as others? No, because Michigan didn't do those things. That's the other part you buy in. And the last part, I think, is how did they run their offense? Jim Harbaugh, Sherrone Moore is the offensive coordinator. That truly was as close to a pro-style offense as you're going to get in college football these days. And he did things like you're going to do in the NFL. He called plays in the huddle. He got under center. He went through the checks. That's another big reason that he's zooming up boards, because if you spend time with him, I've talked with different teams, him on the board talking football, you walk away very impressed with his knowledge and understanding about what he's about to get into.
Hey, Giant fans, say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit fanduel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. You look at the situation the Giants are currently in at quarterback. They seem like they're going to run it back with Daniel Jones this year, whether it be because of the contract or because they really believe in him, whatever the reason might be. That being said, quarterback, if they take a quarterback, that kid is probably going to sit for a year. If that quarterback ends up being J.J. McCarthy, what can the Giants do to further develop him so that when or if there's a change of the guard there, he is ready to step in and be a pro-style quarterback?
Yeah, I think that Brian Daboll, Mike Kafka will have a plan if indeed it goes in that direction. I indicated at my first mock draft. Truthfully, I'm not sure we're going to get there now with the addition of Drew Lock coming to town, but we'll see how it all plays out. But what they would do, and both of them are tremendous coaches and excellent with quarterbacks, they're going to put him in every situation possible. I call it essaying. Okay. You're not going to play once the game becomes for real. Okay. Daniel Jones is going to be our starter and we're going to roll with him. But I think that they'll have a plan in practice. They'll have a plan, all throughout the season. And it'll be everything. How he travels, how they do things in meetings. I think they're going to give him pieces of things so that when it starts, so the next year, if he became the starter, it wouldn't be unfamiliar. You see what I mean? You start to have all these things with an eye towards the future. This is what we expect of you. This is what I want you to take in. I remember in college, there was times, things may have changed a lot now because you don't redshirt automatically like we used to. But if they were trying to redshirt a quarterback, get him ready for the next year, he would travel every week because they wanted him in every meeting, in every situation, feel what it's going to be like to be on the road, put yourself mentally in that position where you're going to be the guy the next year. They'll do all those sorts of things with J.J. McCarthy. I think up to and including in different practice situations, making him feel like he's going to take the ball that weekend. I think the best teams do that and help those kids get comfortable.
Again, sticking with the Giants here, a lot of Giant fans want to see a quarterback at 6. I still believe they're going to maybe go wide receiver. I think maybe getting a wide receiver like a Roma Dunze or a Malik Neighbors, a legitimate #1 receiver, is going to boost the success rate of whoever the quarterback is. Am I crazy for thinking that?
No, not at all. And we have plenty of models that show that. And the Giants have been trying to make that work for a number of years now. I mean, Kenny Golladay got that big contract for a reason. And if you go back and look at what he did in Detroit, he put big numbers up and the Giants thought he could be that guy. It didn't work out. Okay. Darius Slayton continues to get overlooked all the time, but no one's viewing him as a true WR1. All right. He puts up numbers. He makes it work for them, but they'd be much more comfortable if he's WR2, WR3. They would feel like, oh, that production works out well there. Can they get that one person who can make it go? Could it be a Marvin Harrison Jr.? Right now, it feels like where the Giants are at 6, that feels a light year away from him because we think he's going to go up 4 to Arizona. But if it's not him, as you mentioned, is it Roma Dunze from Washington? Is it Malik Neighbors from LSU? Those are the next two on the board. What's your flavor? What's your take? And by the way, Cincinnati a few years ago had that big decision. Do you take Penei Sewell at tackle to keep Joe Burrow upright coming off of a knee injury? Or do you get the wide receiver Jamar Chase from LSU to keep opening up the offense and pair him with Tyler Boyd and pair him with T. Higgins, and you operate that way? Well, they chose the wide receiver. They took off and went. Oh, there's a Super Bowl, AFC Championship game, all that involved. So there's recent precedent to do it that way, and it makes perfect sense. And now that Drew Lock's with the Giants, you know that when I do my next mock draft, I'm going to be taking that into account, and wide receiver is a much more attractive option for me for the Giants sitting there at 6.
Yeah, especially, I mean, Drew Lock's only here on 1 year, but that is a big difference. That's a big gain for the New York Giants. Charles, let me ask you about the second tier, like the day 2 quarterbacks, in the event that the Giants do go receiver at 6. I mean, who are some of the guys that you think are fit that are probably in that day 2 bracket?
Well, we're going to find out if Bo Nix and Michael Penix are truly day 1 guys, because we've had these types of projections before. Remember, we thought Geno Smith was a lock first rounder, ended up going in the second round. So if those two get pushed down, boy, that's when the frenzy begins, right? We start right at 33, day 2, and off we go from there. After that, the quarterback market starts to change a little bit, because now you're saying to yourself, who exactly do I like? Like who captures my fancy? Spencer Rattler from South Carolina is probably the name I hear the most when I talk with different teams about having had some pro stuff that's gone into it, having come up through the ranks, being a quarterback throughout, having come from being an immature teenager to where they see him now having matured, and they're believing in what they're seeing. He's kind of like that next guy that pumps up there. Then after that, it becomes a little bit of a free-for-all. All right. And what's your flavor and what do you really feel? And you and I both know 32 teams, you get 32 different opinions, right? So Sam Hartman out of Notre Dame, right? Austin Reed out of Western Kentucky. These are guys I'm not thinking are going to be day 2. Like, I think day 2 may be Spencer Rattler and whoever doesn't go in the Penix Bo Nix mix. And that might be it on day 2. I think we're starting to get to that point. The most intriguing guy physically is Joe Milton out of Tennessee. All right, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, okay? He is Anthony Richardson 2024, but people don't see him as the same thrower. Now, as far as arm, like, it's one of those ones where, you know, the kid that you play with in the backyard had the best arm, would tell you, go deep. And they keep saying, he or she would say, keep going, keep going, keep going, because they had the biggest arm. They wanted to show it off. That's Joe Milton. You're not going to outrun that arm. But the touch, the ability to hit 3rd and 4, the ability to keep the chains moving, he's had some struggles with that. So someone's going to have to buy in and say, okay, I want him, spend some time, and go. I don't see that as day 2.
Charles, there's been talk about maybe the Giants trading down, which I don't know if that makes sense for them. I mean, I would stay put if I were them, but I'm not being paid to make that decision. But you look at Minnesota, which now has the capital to move up. They want a quarterback. I think it's pretty obvious. If you're the Giants, do you consider trading down with the idea that maybe you could still get a top receiver and then maybe use some of the assets you pick up in a trade down with Minnesota to maybe get back into the bottom of the first round to get your quarterback?
Yeah, and that's definitely a possibility. Joe Shane's going to go through that and let the phones ring and see. Personally, I think because what we've seen with Minnesota, where they picked up the extra first rounder, which tells you that they're gearing up their chest, right? They're trying the best to put those assets together to make a move. I think the first call they're making is to Washington at 2. I think that's where you have to start, because that gives you a chance to get the person you truly want. This isn't a thing of like, we go scattershot and whatever quarterbacks remain, we'll want to take it. No, Minnesota will have a specific target in mind. To get your person, I think you have to start at 2, because we know Caleb Williams is going 1 to Chicago, right? You and I both know if some other name comes off of Commissioner Goodell's mouth on the first night in Detroit, we're going to have a major explosion, right? Like, what? No one saw that coming. But 2 with Washington, who do you like? Who do you want best? That's where you want to cut the deal. Because if you're waiting, Washington's taking someone at 2. Okay, you better talk to New England. They're sitting at 3. Talk about quarterback needy. Okay, they are beyond quarterback needy. They need a full restart there. You better talk to them at 3. That's how it's going to go down. So I can't wait to see what comes about. But Joe Shane sitting there, if someone wants to make a deal and maybe J.J. McCarthy's the target, the 4th quarterback, they might have to get in front of the Giants, and that could be an interesting conversation. Move down, pick up assets, still the thing. The kicker, though, is, are you comfortable with that quarterback you would want, as you pointed out, at the bottom of the 1st round? Is that Bo Nix? Is it Michael Penix? Is that someone that you're that comfortable with saying, okay, I can accumulate talent, go get the other guy? That'd be a question Joe Shane would have to answer. And you and I both know he's not going to tell us before the draft.
Yeah, definitely. Charles, we've been talking mostly about quarterbacks and wide receivers, but I want to get your take on some of the other positions where the class is deep and where maybe some of the depth might align with some of the Giants' needs. Right now, as we record this, they need a cornerback 2. They could probably use some additional depth on the defensive line next to Dexter Lawrence. You can never have too many offensive linemen, obviously. I mean, when you look at the other positions, where are the strengths right now?
I think offensive line is a big strength, especially at the tackle position, but the interior offensive line is pretty good as well. I see 3 centers that I would draft and start next year. So interior offensive line has some strength, maybe a little top heavy, but there's some strength in there. Tackles for days, it feels like right now. A lot of guys out there available for you. Cornerbacks, look, the way we're playing football now, we're going to have receivers every year in the draft that we're just choked with plenty of receivers. You can get 1 through 7. You pointed out earlier, Puka Nacua went in the 5th round. Okay, how'd that work out? Pretty well for the Rams. So you can find talent and people all the way through. Well, at some point, you have some people who match up with them, right? And I've been advocating now, like if you're a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 at a college, if you can turn around and backpedal, you might zoom up to cornerback 1 or 2 pretty quickly and have a chance to be someone who can play in the NFL. And I think we're starting to see more and more of that, where those guys are making flips or making a decision earlier in their career. Hey, this is the side of ball I can go to. Plenty of those corners. Look in the SEC, Alabama has 2, Missouri's got 2 that can flat out play. 3 of those guys are potential 1st-round picks. The 4th in Missouri, Chris Abrams-Drain, is going to be a starting nickel for someone somewhere, depending on when they decide to go get him. But Ennis Rakestraw from Missouri, Terrion Arnold, Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama, they're all 1st-round guys. Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo. The public has really latched on and figured out, oh, boy, this kid can flat out play. The pros knew already. They were already there. But there's plenty of depth behind them, plenty of corners available. So you go and look at that. But I think what's funny is we've watched the running backs in free agency, and it almost seemed like a running back frenzy. And just a year ago, the running backs talked about suing the league about we're not getting our value. I don't know that it's really a frenzy as much as the top teams needing that player, need matching availability, salary cap matching that player. Boom, it works. I still don't think we're going to have put it this way. I think we'll all be surprised if we have a 1st-round running back. Yeah. But starting in round 2, we may have a bunch of running backs come off the board. I think this is kind of where we are and where the game's played now. I feel the same way about inside linebacker. That value is not as high as it used to be. Mm-hmm. Like when I was a kid, you drafted a running back early, you drafted a middle linebacker early, you're not doing that now. But that doesn't mean that they don't need them. It doesn't mean they don't have an effect in the game. Isaiah Pacheco in the 7th round helped win Kansas City back-to-back Super Bowls, because they actually changed their style of play based on who they had on offense. And Isaiah Pacheco really helped change their offense. And that's how they won, because all of a sudden defense was dominating for Kansas City. So you don't throw it 50 times. You help that defense out. And Pacheco allowed them to do that.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and to make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so that you can do more of it. And if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and is designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And if you find your assigned therapist isn't a match, you can switch at any time for no additional charge. Learn to make time your friend. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Charles, give me some names of guys that maybe are not getting enough love, enough attention, but are guys that maybe in the NFL scouting community, they've got their eye on as, potential, when their names are called, people are going to be like, who's that,
I know what you're talking about. One of my favorites is Cole Bishop, a safety out of Utah, that probably is not as name deficient after the combine as he was going into it. He's a kid I just love on tape. Like, he cleans up everything in front of him when he tackles. He makes sure everybody's in the right spot. He goes to where the football is and makes plays on the ball in the passing game. And then he showed up and ran 4.45 at the combine, which I think surprised people. Okay. Boom. That changes your viewpoint. I'm like, ooh, okay. I might want to get a better look at this young man. All right. There's an offensive lineman named Christian Haynes out of UConn that had a really big Senior Bowl, but he's really awkward looking on tape. And what I mean by that is there's not a lot of smooth to his game, right? When it's time to skip pull, he doesn't look like he's just dancing down the line of scrimmage. He wants to play the game right here and beat you up doing it. And boy, he does it really well. He's a heck of a mauler. Coming out of UConn, playing there, more than held his own with the power people. T'Vondre Sweat was there from Texas, who's 366 pounds, a bulldozer. And this kid's just meeting him, and they're just having battle after battle after battle. He's a kid that is getting more and more attention. And it reminds me a little bit of Nate Davis coming out of Charlotte, who's been a road grader with Tennessee and now with Chicago. That's where I feel like with a Christian Haynes, he kind of fits that for me in a big way. Look, Malachi Corley, the wide receiver, probably getting more attention now than ever before. Had a big Senior Bowl week, built like your most physical running back. So immediately, what's the comparison? Deebo Samuel. He's the kid who catches the ball within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage and turns into 15-yard gains routinely. He's that type of a player. Where will he go in the draft? That's going to be interesting to say, because he's the type of player that you can use in the slot. You can use him out wide, but his biggest asset is catching it, breaking tackles, and continuing downfield. Can you hand it to him on the jet sweep? Of course you can. We're doing that with all of them. Puka Nacua did that at BYU. By the way, the reason Nacua went in the 5th round, he couldn't stay healthy at BYU. If he had been healthy during his time at BYU, he doesn't get out of 2nd round. No ifs, ands, and buts. But he was hurt the entire time. Like every year, playing well, bang, playing well, bang, playing well, bang. We get to the Senior Bowl. He's the best player on the field the first day. Got hurt. Never saw him rest of the week. That's why he went in the 5th round. So part of that art, science, understanding, sometimes it goes against you as well.
Charles, final question for you. Every year in the draft, there is a curveball thrown that nobody saw coming.
Yeah.
What's your best guess for what that curveball is going to be? Usually it's in the 1st round, I guess. So, I mean, what do you see potentially happening that's going to just blow up the internet?
That's a great one. Let's start with this. Let's start with Denver Broncos, who are coming off the Russell Wilson. They're going to have the dead money. They still need assets in the whole deal. But there's a big feeling like, who's your quarterback? So we're all feeling like in mock drafts, like Denver's got to take a quarterback, right? Okay, whether you leave them at 12 or if you play games in your mock draft and have them make a trade, they don't have a lot of assets to trade. Okay, so we've been doing that. What if somehow the quarterback situation comes up where there's a quarterback someone wants and now they want to, and Denver's in play? I could easily see Denver getting out of 12 and moving back and gaining assets and trying to help out their team, realizing that maybe the quarterback they wanted is already gone. So you don't force it with Sean Payton. You try and play with Jarrett Stidham for right now, if indeed that's where they go. You get the whole idea. That could be an interesting one. because we've seen them. We didn't expect to be in this spot. 2 years ago when they signed Russell Wilson, this was not our thought process at all. And we thought, hey, if they could ever rehab his career, it'd be with Sean Payton. That didn't happen either. But is Sean Payton going to force it and just take a quarterback to take one? Absolutely not. He's going to want to get a guy that he thinks is going to work for his offense, and he might have one in mind later. Who knows how that goes down? But I know we've all been saying J.J. McCarthy would be perfect there, or Bo Nix would be perfect there. I don't know that they go that direction. So that could be my interesting one where they would end up coming down and then one of those surprise teams popping up and getting it. Minnesota's no longer a surprise. They've got 2 first-round picks. We know what they're in the market for. We feel like the Las Vegas Raiders have announced their intentions very well, too. They want to get up there and try and get a quarterback. Can they get that done? Is there a surprise somewhere that we're not seeing that could make that type of a move? Atlanta, they're off the board for that now, getting Kirk Cousins. So who's it going to be? That's going to be the interesting one for me.
Yeah, it's going to be it's almost like a free for all is shaping up for, to get these quarterbacks.
Yeah. I think that's kind of where we are. But again, we can get fooled too. Was it Marcus Davenport a few years ago out of UTSA, and the Saints made that big move in the first round to go up to like 12, and we all went back, oh, they're coming for a quarterback. And then Marcus Davenport's name came off the board. We're like, whoa, we didn't see that one. So you never know. Because New Orleans, let's just leave it at New Orleans. Drew Brees isn't walking through that door, but they gave up a lot for Derek Carr, and it seems like they're all in with him, and they brought back Dennis Allen to be the head coach. They want to make a big move in that direction. I don't think quarterback's in play for them there. Although it seems like, wow, that'd be a good spot. It just doesn't feel like it to me, but what do I know?
Is there any better feeling than to cover the draft and just see how everything unfolds? I mean, do you get as excited as I do?
I think we all do if we're watching the game, because here's my small theory on it. We all know whether we could have played in the NFL or not. So when the games are going on, there's less of a feel, I believe, amongst all of us, and I'm part of all of us, right? I know I can't do that. Mm-hmm. But watching players play, evaluating them, especially now with the options available to all of us as fans. Remember when we couldn't get all 22 tape, right? So we're just trying to watch stuff we recorded on TV or video clips and all, and evaluating players. Now, the true dedicated fan gets all 22 tape, and they can watch 6-7 games and make their own evaluations. The access to information and the knowledge that's out there now, unprecedented. So I think that most people feel like, yeah, I may not be able to do the actual playing, but I can tell you if that's a good player or not, as well as that darn Davis guy. In fact, my percentage of the first round last year was way better than his. And I totally get it, and I respect that from everyone. That's why I tell my colleagues all the time, I said, we lost our trump card, which was we had access to all 22 tape. They did not. They have it now, meaning the fans, all the people that we embrace and want. Guess what? Try and talk down to them now and see how that works for you. It's not going to work. Because as soon as you try and talk down, they're like, hold on a second. I watched 7 of his games last year. And this is what I saw. We all feel like we can tell what a good ball player is. And that's why I think the draft has become bigger and bigger and bigger, because people feel like they have a hand in it, and they also have an opinion, and we can all share them now, because it doesn't take much more than this to share everything you want to share. So it all works out pretty well. We're all in it together now, GMs included.
Exactly. All right, Charles, great stuff. I appreciate you coming on. Now, you said your next mock draft is the 27th.
I believe it comes out the afternoon of the 27th. So,
and it's probably going to look a lot different than the one that you just posted, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think there'll be a few changes along the way.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing that. He is Charles Davis, an NFL analyst, a draft analyst. The NFL Network provides live coverage of the draft, the 2024 NFL draft from Detroit, April 25th through the 27th. It's going to be here before we know it. I know I can't wait, Charles. I'm sure you can't wait. Folks, thank you so much for tuning into the Locked On Giants podcast. Make sure you keep it here all week long as we continue to bring you more content here. For Charles Davis, I'm Patricia Traina. We'll see you again, Giant fans.